everybody, and welcome to the Pro Detailer podcast. We are back after a little hiatus. We have been obviously writing issue 13, and that's all come out. So now we're back on kind of series 2, if you like, of the podcast, but more about that later. We are joined by our celebrity guest of the day, Mr. Paul Townsend.
Good morning.
How are you doing, Paul?
I'm very good, thank you. You?
I'm surviving. We've also got the old favourite, Ian.
Hello.
And
I still can't get in my head that a hiatus is a type of Toyota.
No, that's a hiace.
Oh, okay.
I thought it was a plant.
Oh, it is
Will somebody water me hiatus?
So this detailing podcast that we're doing. Well, Paul is joined now. I'll just give you a little bit of a background on Paul. I mean, not the full CRB, but generally, Paul has been in the industry a very long time. When did you start, in fact, Paul?
Early 2000s.
Early 2000s. And what did you do before that?
Straight before this, I ran a printing firm. I was general manager of a lithographic printing firm.
Okay, you.
Which was not even half as exciting as it doesn't even sound. Before that, I worked for Thames Valley Police. I was on the nines, answering the 999s.
Crikey.
And before that, I was in sales.
Brilliant. So you're older than you look then?
During the war, yeah.
The Crimea. So you originally started with Shine On, didn't you?
I did, yes.
And you're known as Shine On Paul.
Yes.
Which I always thought was sort of kind of like Jesus in the Technicolor Dreamcoat. And your big kind of early claim to fame was an appearance on the telebox.
It was.
And it was Fifth Gear.
It was.
And I remember, have you had one or two appearances on that?
Two.
Because I remember there's one that involved Voxlastras.
That was the first one. So that was with Tim Shaw.
Yes. Is he a nice person?
He was very funny.
Yeah.
He was tiring. He was like somebody who was just overly full of sugar from about 4:30 in the morning until quite late that evening when we finished.
I like when somebody said, "Oh, is he nice?" and you just go with a completely different adjective just to avoid you.
To avoid highlighting.
He smelt lovely.
He was just a bit of an energy bomb.
Yeah, well, I suppose that's what you need in telly.
Yeah.
And the second, remind me what happened the second time round.
That was with Johnny Smith.
Who's lovely.
He is a legend. He really is a lovely guy.
He's my hero, basically.
Yeah, and we had a Rolls-Royce press car.
That was it.
And we were talking about new car preparation and the benefits of doing so and why it's necessary and whatnot. So, yeah.
And I remember you got waxed up for that, didn't you? Well, the car got waxed.
The car got waxed, yes. Yeah, be specific. Details are important.
So all this showbiz, did you find that made a massive difference to your business?
No, not really, no. It didn't. It's not as though loads of inquiries came in the door as a result of it. I guess it added some credibility. People would see it, and I think people were booking cars in without any particular realisation. And on a few occasions I turned up and people were like, haven't you been... didn't I see you on the telly? There was a bit of that going on.
And they knew it was like Fifth Gear and not Crime Watch or anything like that?
Well, that's the trouble. I think they were searching their brain as to why I was familiar, but the worry until they clocked what it was.
Those E-fits are never accurate anyway.
No, I always get mistaken for Anne Robinson.
It served a bigger purpose just for friends to take the mickey out of it, actually. So.
Yeah, I can imagine that. And I mean, it's well known.
I mean, Bert was on Love in the Countryside.
Very, very briefly.
Kate Humble.
Didn't go
Wasn't
very well.
Rumble.
Actually, no, it was the other one. Who was that Radio 1 DJ during the 90s? Sarah Cox.
Right.
That's the one.
I just love that you've probably messed up with the long meat thing that Kate Humble did. That's a different Love in the Countryside.
Yes,
but it was also on that one.
They did always say lock your doors.
Couldn't go in the penguin enclosure again.
No, not after last time. But now, of course, you're not Shine On Paul, you're Auto Curators.
I am.
Which is I really like the name. And you've got a fancy pants logo. And avid followers of the magazine will have read, I believe, issue 4, where you featured. And you're talking about rebranding. And I think, obviously, it was a really good job. I liked what was done.
Thank you.
What was the process? What made you think you needed to, and how did you go about it?
So there were other people involved in the business at this point. I had some help, some mentoring, and some investment, and it was part of a project to make us bigger, effectively, and with a view to being able to scale the business. And we talked about it. We asked just some opinions. It's sort of normally the easiest place to start is ask some customers, ask some friends, and ask for an honest opinion of what do you think of this? Could it be better? And yeah, we felt it needed a bit of help to scale up. So we thought of the name. So Auto Curators was something that appealed to us. We were trying to tell people a little bit about what we do. Curators, by definition, is a keeper of fine things. A curator is.
Yes.
So it was that it conjures up an image, and I think there are some really clever names out there for businesses in our industry.
Yeah, Splash mobile valeting, Reflections mobile.
Yeah, but there are also some that are very clever, but they don't tell people what you do. And if you don't know what detailing is, I mean, I think it's fair to say that the public know what valeting is. But if you're using the word detailing, still a lot of people don't know what it is. And those that do and book you, that's great. But you're also trying to appeal to those that don't know that they can benefit from your services, and getting that across to somebody that it just needs to twig in their brain of, could I benefit from that? Who are they? What do they do? I think that's important.
It's intriguing. Part of me thinks that also, if you ever want to go into car storage, it would be quite a good name as well for that.
It does work on multiple levels. There's other, yes, and that's part of the bigger picture at the time. Not that I've got any particular plans to at the moment, but it is flexible. So to help us with that, we used a brand consultant. So going to him with the concept of the business and kind of what we wanted to achieve, where we wanted to be, and gave him a free rein to design us a brand. How will we appear? How would it work?
And it was quite a bit of money, wasn't it?
It was. We got quite an advantageous rate because one of the chaps involved in the business had spent an awful lot of money with him rebranding his business, which is completely unrelated to our industry. But the chap was intrigued. He's not a car guy, and I really liked that. And we went to him and said, we are a startup business. I don't have a huge budget, but we need some help. Would you be prepared to? And I certainly wouldn't expect to do that for free, because I won't do work for free, but we sort of discussed budget. And
it was kind of 4 figures, so it was a healthy investment.
Yes, it was. It was a noticeable sum of money.
And it's quite a risk going with a company that's not involved in the industry, if you like, because a lot of the time, if you look at some of the automatic copy that's written for a lot of these websites, that they try to write about detailing and they miss the mark by 100 feet.
Half the time it's in Latin, lorem ipsum.
Lorem ipsum. But the flip side of that is that in looking to appeal to people who aren't my customer already, then I'm getting the view of somebody who he drove a nice car, he had a nice Audi, and he was intrigued by what we did. So whilst he's not a car guy, when he started to understand that if we treated his car that he spent a lot of money on, it would suddenly look fabulous and be easier to look after, and all the benefits that we know about, he was interested.
So effectively getting your customer to write their own advert for you.
A little bit, yeah. I just wanted that input from somebody who didn't. You know what it's like when you're too close to something, you'll make assumptions about what other people know or other people think. Whereas he was coming at it from a different point of view. Of whilst we'd explained to him who our ideal demographic was, and I guess he was somebody who was within that. You know, as a reasonably affluent sort of disposable income with a nice car owner. He didn't know that he could benefit from what we did. He didn't know about what we did.
That actually brings up a really interesting topic, which is we kind of assume that all those with nice cars are car people. And I'm seeing more and more people who have got cars slightly as a status symbol maybe, or just because they like nice things.
By that definition, you're not a car person.
That's cutting. But you know, more to the point, and equally having something shiny. I mean, for example, I've helped quite a few people buy cars as friends, family, that sort of thing. And you'd be amazed. I find the perfect car with a great service history, absolute the spec that they need, and all the rest of it. And they're like, oh, but I don't like the colour. And it is a very visual thing. And you know, detailers provide that shiny, squeaky thing. You know, and that is actually something a lot of non-car people want. So I think it's probably, I don't know, something people should perhaps consider a little bit more is non-car people, as I think there are probably more non-car people than there are car people.
Well, but equally, just because somebody has got a nice car, even what you might consider an enthusiast car, a connoisseur's car, you know, they've gone to the trouble of buying a Porsche, an Aston Martin, as something that you think needs a bit of choice. They're not that fussed.
No.
They don't automatically assume that they're going to be interested. They're quite happy to chuck it through the local scratch and shine. And
and people like me sidle up to them in the car park and ask them about how many valves they've got. They just call the police.
These are the people that are putting snow chains on the front wheels of a BMW, aren't they?
Yes, and just there was dribbling oil over the engine when it said it was low on oil, as if it was a salad. I thought that was a giggle.
One of our neighbours, I found her frustratingly trying to top up the oil in her car, making a complete mess. I mean, she's a teacher; she's a very intelligent lady, so I'm not suggesting she was daft. Yeah. But she was trying to use the dipstick tube to fill the oil with predictable results. So yeah, you don't ever assume anything.
At least it was through the fuel cap. Although that would have worked on my Audi.
Yes. Indeed. So yeah, rebranding. It's something, if you are, running your own valeting detailing company, and I know lots of people do like to kind of jazz up or update their brand. Some people like to go completely different, but it's worth thinking about a third party. And I think the other takeaway from that is talk to other people, not necessarily people who are just going to say yes to everything, but also people who might represent your customer base better than you do.
Well, again, it's an article. We've been writing a rebranding article for the last 4 issues, I think now. Because every single time we think, we've got quite a good little comparison going on here. They change their branding again. I think at one point the article featured Dodo Juice and Crankalicious, and then Dodo Juice updated their branding after the whole thing was, they haven't updated it in ages, and then they go and do it and completely ruin the article.
Yeah, and Stylo-Gloss have changed their labels as well.
Polished Bliss, we did a huge bit on their sort of rebrand, and then they got swallowed up by.
I think they're still Polished Bliss.
They are still Polished Bliss,
but they're part of the Clean Your Car empire, which is also Shop and Shine, Polished Bliss.
Yes.
Just about everybody else now. It's all just one huge empire. We will complete that branding article.
Maybe before 15,
16. It'll happen this millennium.
Just keep buying it, and you might get lucky
and see what happens. And the other interesting thing you brought up there was third-party involvement / investment in your business. And a lot of people, I think, get into this industry because they're their own boss. But quite a lot of people are limited. They say, I can't possibly have a unit. I can't possibly have this, and this because it costs too much, which is totally fair enough. But if you bring in a third party to bring some money into it, and they may or may not have a say in how you run the business, but you've certainly got to kind of sell it to them and provide some usually financial sort of incentive. What's your experience of working with investors, and how's that kind of helped or hindered you?
So it's been a really useful experience. I suppose I've put that slightly tactfully, and I mean to. It's had its upsides and downsides. It's not been all plain sailing. And I will say that at this time, I've bought my investors out. I own the business completely again.
Do you mind if I ask how many you had at sort of the height of it, as it were?
So for the founding shareholders, effectively, there were 5 of us. And it wasn't just about money, it was about what they bring, and this is what I would like people to think about. So it's come up occasionally in PVD. People have asked me, people have sort of known that I've had other people involved in the business, and they've phoned and asked. So there are far bigger issues than just putting money in. And if you're just after money with a view to like capital investment, with a view to getting a unit or buying a plotter or buying a dry ice machine, or whatever it is that you need, think about other ways. What do you want out of that? If you just want money, then seriously consider going and securing finance. Go and think about a bank loan. You talk to your business bank supplier. To me, somebody being involved in your business, that's a big thing. And you need to have a really good discussion with them beforehand to understand very clearly what they want out of it and what you want out of it and what you expect. And it needs to be set out. I mean, there are all sort of legal documents, shareholders agreements, all sorts of things that can be put in place. And they're really useful. And I think that step to very clearly understand who does what, who wants what, who's expecting what is absolutely vital, because without that, there will be tears. Absolutely will be tears. So if, for example, they're putting in a sum of money, but you want them to open doors, that for example, they know people and they might be able to make introductions for you that you would never otherwise get. That's the value. It's not the money.
The black book.
Yes, it's not the money that they're putting in that's the value. and you get into another whole conversation about valuing businesses and whatnot. I mean, I'm no expert in that, and that's a really difficult conversation. And I think within our industry, where a lot of stuff isn't based around contracts, it's very much goodwill. You can't really price that. You can't. It's another conversation. But I wouldn't discourage people from having that conversation, because I think there's a lot of people with affluent, successful customers that say, I wouldn't mind putting a bit in or helping you out or being involved. That's not an uncommon scenario, but just be really clear on what you want out of that. It sounds great, and it could be great, but how is it going to work? That's the mechanics of it.
What do you think with working with family? Is that a yay or a nay from you?
I think that's going to have to be a very individual thing. My wife very kindly did all our books, VAT returns, yearly returns and whatnot. She's in financial services, so she's minded in a way that I am absolutely not. And that was great, but equally there'd be the frustrations of, what have you done with that receipt? Where's that invoice? I asked you for that a week ago. Where is it? Yeah, and that can be awkward.
It can bring work home, I guess, a bit.
You're never away from it.
It's very difficult to ignore an email. So, no, I didn't
It's even more difficult to ignore your wife at the dinner table who sent you. That's the really difficult one. But for other people, I mean, I know sort of detailers that work with their partners and whatnot, and it works really well for them. It wouldn't for me personally,
it's an interesting thing. On the kind of last, we'll take a little break shortly, but on the last topic, kind of businessy topic, so to speak, is franchising. So I get asked a lot of the time with my PVD hat on of people wanting to basically expand their business, be it by employing somebody, be it by creating a franchise. And I always myself recommend against franchising, because they don't realise how much work is involved in setting it all up.
And trust.
There's trust as well, and there's only so much that a piece of paper and a contract can garner. At the end of the day, it boils down to the human being. And also, it all, as I say, boils down to the quality of the franchisee, in my experience, because I've seen, we've had quite a few members who've run franchises with mixed success. I can only think of one or two that are still going and yielding fruit and seem to be running nicely. And I can think about 5 or 6 that are no longer. Give us a brief rundown of your kind of franchising experience and any advice you have for our listeners.
Definitely not something to be undertaken lightly. I think there are people out there that have got another guy in a van using their name, and it's a franchise in the loosest sense of it. I think our experience has been far more hard work than I was expecting, if I'm honest. The initial part of it, when we were writing the operations manual, one of the key things that underpin this is documenting your business. It's a user manual for your business, and it was a really good thing. I mean, it soaked up hundreds, if not thousands, of hours between my wife and I to document this, and kind of that, it's like your homework, doing your homework. Where do you start? We have to start somewhere. So
it's probably quite a good process in itself, getting you reflect on what you do.
It was
introspection.
Because you go through everything you do. You're explaining to somebody else, I polish a car in this way, I would start in this way, and then you think, but why do I start this way? What other ways are there, and why don't I choose them? So you're having to think about it, justify it, write it down, and explain it, and maybe explain the alternatives. And I mean, I think with detailing, valeting, there are lots of ways to achieve the same thing. It's not an absolute, it's not a massively process-driven result in that sense. And I've explained to people I've trained in the past, I'll show you the result that I want you to achieve. I will show you the tools that I use. I will show you the safe and efficient ways to do this. You'll end up finding your own route to some extent, but this is the way that I do this. And ultimately with a franchise, what people should be buying is training. They're buying experience. They're buying the benefit of the franchisor's
the mistakes he's already made.
Absolutely, that's right. And stuff like that. Now, the reality of that is our experience hasn't at the moment we're without a franchise. We've got an office in Scotland operating as a franchise with PPF only, but as in terms of emulating what we do with the detailing side of stuff, we don't have a franchisee at the moment. We did, and it didn't work out. And I would say that the thing for the franchisor is you just cannot tell. It's a bit like a job interview. It's like taking somebody on and they'll say all the right things, but what you've got to do is make sure they understand. And I thought we did, and I'm still learning. Did we make a mistake in the explaining? But they just weren't prepared to work hard enough. They thought they were buying automatic success, and we were pretty explicit to say this is going to be a lot of hard work. You know, you're going to have to put in a lot of groundwork.
Yeah,
we're not a company.
Customers aren't provided necessarily.
That's right. When you go buy into Chips Away, Revive, those kind of smart repair body shop franchises, a lot of that comes down to national contracts. So they'll have names out of a hat. A Sitner Group, for example, will all go to them for that repair. So you're walking into an instant order book that you can pick up and generate revenue. Well, that's, you know, for a smaller firm like ours, that wasn't the case. We have leads for where we went for that kind of stuff. But there's going to be a lot of groundwork. But the shortcut is that you've got the knowledge, the backup, the phone call at any time to say, I'm struggling, how do I make this work? You know, we'll go and visit, we'll sit down, we'll write business plans together, we'll look at leads, we'll look at how we contact people. But yeah, there's a lot of work still required by the franchisee. And there's nothing you can do, and if they're not prepared to do that, you can't do it.
The thing is, I think because if you're new into the business, you haven't got that baseline. You probably don't realise just how useful that sort of extra input and that backup, that little bit of knowledge base is especially when you're just starting out. Even if you only go down that sort of franchise route for sort of 3 or 4 years to get everything under your belt, learn everything you effectively can from that company, and then break off and do something by yourself. It really is a lot of benefit for relatively little money, considering what you'd probably lose out making the mistakes, trial and error.
That's right. I mean, you're into sort of contractual stuff as well there. So typically with UK franchising law, you would tend to have 5-year contracts at a time. Mm-hmm. So with the right to renew kind of changes, it's normally the franchise
and like a non-compete built into it.
That's right. Yeah. You know, and people will tend to find that will be fiercely protected, because if you don't, people will walk all over you.
Yeah. I think with franchises, if you do them properly and you find the right person, they are a brilliant thing.
Yes.
But I think the number of pitfalls, and particularly as us, you know, from a typical detailer or valeter, is not necessarily a kind of not necessarily an entrepreneur. You might run your own business, but it doesn't mean you're a businessman.
No.
You see what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think it's something that needs to be handled with care.
Yes.
But certainly something as PBD I spend a lot of time sort of helping people with, and usually we come to the conclusion that it's sort of not appropriate at this time.
Yeah.
But anyhow, away from all that businessy stuff, we are going to take a little pause now, and we will be back soon with some more chat with Paul.
Hey guys, hope you're enjoying the podcast so far. If you are and you want to support us a little bit more, what you can do is go to prodetailermagazine.com and check out some of our merchandise there. We've got some t-shirts, we've got some hats, we've got some cool posters. Have a look, see if there's anything you like.
And we're back. We have got the lovely Paul Townsend here, and we want to talk about a couple of really cool things. One of which is Paul is big into PPF.
Yes.
PPF. What percentage of your revenue, roughly, would you say is PPF? Let's throw you a numbers question.
I don't do numbers. Probably, I would say 60+%.
So it's really substantial. Yeah. And of course, a PPF job is normally preceded by a detailing job, I would imagine.
They're very symbiotic, yes.
Yeah, no, that's cool. So one thing I wanted to talk about was doing ceramic coatings on top of PPF, because for quite a few years now there have been various things. I know you are a big Expel man, aren't you?
Yes.
And they do their own fusion.
They do fusion coating, is Expel's own.
And Ceramic Pro is similar, because they do the Cavaca PPF, and then they do coatings on top of that.
Yep.
G-Tech, of course, got Halo, and I think there are various others out there.
What's the Car Pro one?
Should know, but I don't.
Guion, I've got one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So they are a thing, but I was thinking, well, hang on, you've got PPF is for the protection. If you're then putting protection upon protection, you get to the point where why don't you just put an extra layer of lacquer on the car?
Well, unfortunately, after you put the ceramic on there, you have to put a wax on there to protect the ceramic.
Yeah,
So,
and then you need to have a quick detailer to protect the wax.
Yeah.
And then just leave it in the garage.
encase it in cement and bury it.
Yeah. No, that's car ownership nowadays. So what's your take on it? Because we're just taking the Michael here, but you actually have hands-on experience with this sort of thing.
Yeah, I'm not a big seller of ceramics onto PPF. Obviously, PPF does a different job to a ceramic coating, and we often have to explain that to customers. They think they're very, should I have one or the other? And the answer is they work very well together, but they do different things. So PPF on its own is typically the likes of the sort of top PPF, Cavaca, Expel, Lumar, Suntec. They're very good. They're easy to look after. They're easy to live with. But like anything, they can stain. And the idea of the ceramic coatings, I think, really is to just make those a little bit easier to look after. Because if you're washing a car, it's definitely nicer to wash a car that's covered in a ceramic coating than it is PPF. I will say that.
Okay, so if somebody comes to you wanting you to do it to them, that you would be happy to put a coating on top of their PPF.
So yeah, we do that. I don't particularly push it. One of those. There's mixed bags. I've not seen it long enough for myself to be confident in what it offers because it's not cheap. The coatings are quite expensive. They're not particularly nice to use, which isn't a customer problem. That's our problem. But of course, it becomes a customer's problem when it's time consuming and therefore it's more expensive. The benefits need to be there for us to be confident. I won't just sell something as a markup. We need to see a benefit. We need to be confident it's going to offer them something extra because otherwise they're going to question us, and that's fair enough. So there's been a little bit of, and this is subjective, I've got nothing to back this up, but the groups that we talk or that we're members of in the States primarily, there's been question marks over do coatings actually promote staining on especially on lighter colour cars that have got PPF on, tyre dressings and whatnot. I'm not sure. It's very much an opinion rather than anything factual, but we're keeping an eye on it.
It's an interesting
I'm surprised up until now because they do seem to be able to impregnate a lot of finishes into PPS. I'm surprised there's not a film being developed that has got a super hydrophobic surface to it, or that is that down to how flexible they have to be to go on?
A little bit. So as I understand it, I mean, they're very secretive about it. All the film manufacturers are super secretive about it. But as I understand it, the coated product, so for example, because we are now exclusively Expel, the coating does have, the film does have a natural degree of hydrophobic behaviour. Okay. Not super hydrophobic, but as I understand it, if you want it more hydrophobic, you will end up sacrificing some of the self-healing nature of it, which of course is a massive benefit to the film. So I personally would rather it be better at self-healing and perhaps every few months just use, I don't know, a ceramic infused quick detailer or a spray wax, something like that with a degree of hydrophobic property to it, and that's all you want of it, that you can just literally wipe on and buff off.
And will they adhere okay to PPF? Things like a spray wax or spray sealant?
They go on fine, yeah. I mean, it's like anything. There's will it bond at a chemical level? No, none of them do. That's not what they do. It's purely a wipe on and a spray on and wipe off kind of product.
Well, I suppose, ultimately paint is plastic, as is PPF ultimately, so it's all the same shebang. Well, that's cool. One thing, when you're not detailing, I know that you go on the odd tour. You do the petrol head tours.
Yes, I want to do more. I've sort of more recently got a car that I deem to be a little bit more tour worthy. Yeah,
you turned up in a very tasty. It's a CLK 500.
It is, yes.
And so that's a 5.5 V8, and you've had yours mapped to 410 horsepower. Or do we not tell the insurance?
Allegedly. It's all declared.
It's all declared. Of course it is. And it's very nice. And you were saying you're not a Mercedes man, but you do rather like the Mercedes.
No, I do like V8s though, so that worked out quite well.
I'm sitting here with the second fastest Mercedes on the driveway now, which is quite depressing.
It's not a forever car. It's something that came up. It's quite amusing. It's a bit of an old man spec. It's subtle. It's quite quiet, but yeah, it's appreciably quick. So it'll do very well. So I'm doing a tour of the Scottish Highlands next month with Petrohead Tours, which I'm really looking forward to. I did a tour of California California and Nevada back in 2018 with Pete Osborne, who runs Petrolhead Tours, and it was one of the best weeks I've ever had. It was great. Yeah. I was on my own in the car, which was I could listen to whatever choice of music with nobody complaining.
Yep.
A convertible Corvette. We did about 2,500 miles of just stomping around desert and mountain roads and all sorts. It was just the best thing ever.
That sounds so fun. And Pete, we know Pete as well. We eat curry with him occasionally, and he's a very lovely man.
He is. The great thing about the tours is I think it's not just a tour company. Pete makes that because the work that Pete puts into that is phenomenal. It sounds fun, but he has spent thousands of hours, just trawling the roads to find the best route. And for me, as a business owner, I spend all day making decisions, or all week, and having to think about everything. So it's nice
to actually have that all done for you.
You just switch off. You just know hotels are booked. You know where there's going to be fuel en route. You're not worried about running out of fuel. You're not worried about where there's going to be something to eat. Get a coffee. It's just taken care of, and if you've got a question, Pete's got the answer.
It's kind of an automotive dominatrix. Powerful men quite like dominatrixes because they tell them what to do, I'm told.
Yeah, it's not quite how I'd looked at it, but
no, but now you're looking at it like that.
Now that's in your head. It's going to make for an awkward trip around Scotland. Really, isn't it?
I'll be glad to look Pete in the eye next time. Thanks for that.
Okay. I'll make sure he's in leather. What's weird is that engine in your Mercedes, because obviously James over at TI22 had a very similar car, but his was pre-facelift.
He had the 55 AMG.
Yeah. And then Mr. Gordon Muir has an E500 in the same colour as yours,
right,
which is very nice. So I don't know whether it is a sort of, when you're a senior detailer, you kind of grow up and get yourself a Mercedes. Although, but then Ian, he's got a Mercedes now.
I also have to grow up as well.
That's the Chavy one. Though.
It is. It's the hatchback. You very much like your new Mercedes, though, don't you?
Yes. I was surprised how much I do like it, actually. I thought it was going to be a car that I'd buy and after 12 months get rid of it, but after driving it, it's actually my favourite car I've owned so far, I think.
Well, I'm falling back.
It's quite sad being an automatic as well. I think I've just got lazy.
No, but it's not...
Getting old, I think is the word.
Thanks for that.
Isn't yours a flappy paddle, though?
Yes.
It is a flappy paddle automatic.
Yes, but I don't use them because I'm lazy. As we've just covered.
Fair enough. Well, we won't be doing a car news feature, but I would like to say that Boris is now back, road legal, MOT'd, and performing brilliantly. I went down to Somerset and picked up this very table along with many others at the same time. And so he's there, and I'm going to try and get him to 500,000 miles. That's my aim. But we currently have to have a family decision whether we keep the Forester or Boris. So my money's on Boris, but that's mostly because I can get more for the Forester. But anyway, that is an aside. The final thing that I kind of wanted to touch on, we have got some quick fire questions coming, but the final thing I wanted to touch on is you are a PVD board member.
Yes.
And as such, you helped us develop the assessment system, and you were in fact the very first person or small group of people who took the assessments. What do you feel the kind of assessment system that we've introduced, which is quite, it's quite a dividing thing. A lot of people are saying they don't want to take it because they don't see the need, or they don't see the benefit, or they're too good, or they're too nervous. And the latter category I'm trying very hard to kind of bring around. But from your experience, where do you feel the benefit is from your experience of the assessment side?
I would honestly say it's something I was really pleased to be involved with and to be asked to be involved with. I don't see there's any downsides to it. I think anything we can do to raise the profile and the credibility of our members and therefore the industry and set ourselves apart. As business owners, we're all looking to set ourselves apart from competition, from people we consider ourselves to be better than. And I think I don't get the resistance to the assessments. I understand that some people, they might not be perhaps feel the most academically focused people, and that's fine. It's not about that. It's not about trying to catch people out. It's about trying to be able to something they can be proud of and to show that they are responsible, safe, competent. That they run their business properly, the other sort of parts of PVD, the proving that you're insured, that you're running a business properly. I think that's brilliant, and I would encourage people to do so. I genuinely don't get any resistance to it.
I think as well, once you've proved that you're that word responsible, that that you can run a business successfully, that you can take steps to insure yourself, if you're taking care of those sort of aspects, then the general knowledge you just kind of assume is there anyway. Because if you're taking all the further steps, as it were, you just assume that you're competent everywhere else.
Yeah, and it's really good at finding gaps. I mean, we've had quite a few failures, both of the practical and of the theory one, and in all cases, which has been really good, because there's nothing.
There's been no abject failures. There's been quite a few. They're generally not off by far.
No, not
because
by far,
these guys have already gone through a sort of a preliminary.
Yeah, a vetting. Well, we've had also new members who now it's compulsory in order to get into the trade association to do it, and we've had a couple who haven't quite reached it there. But the pass mark's set to 80, so it's quite a high pass.
But that can only be seen as a good thing, because it means there's holes in it, because we're all learning. There's absolutely, nobody can stand and say they know it all. They just can't. None of us can. So if that means that you've highlighted to yourself, it's not about criticism, is it? That's exactly the thing. And I think some people have felt attacked, or some people have felt. I think it's a shame that some people are kind of feel they're above it. I don't think that's a healthy attitude to have. I understand there's an actual cost to doing a test. I appreciate there's a day out of your business, but really,
it's not a big ask.
It's not.
And what's nice is, whether they pass or fail, that we do a lot of feedback, and so many people. We have one guy who's been in the trade for probably as long as you have, and we've had there are a couple of little bits and bobs, and he was like, "Oh, I kind of slipped into a bad habit." Or
complacency is the problem with we've bumped into people. And I remember earlier in my career, I've been doing this 20 years. I've been doing this a long time. It doesn't mean that you're doing it right, or it might mean that you were doing it right then, but things have changed, and chemistry's changed, and the techniques have changed, and machines have changed. There might be a better way of doing that, and if you can educate that to yourself, it can only be for your benefit.
Yeah, I don't think a lot of the people who don't want to do it are doing it because they've got an ego. I think if they outwardly they have an ego, but I think mostly there is a fear factor of failure, and it's something that they need to get over, frankly. Because
it's a natural thing.
Yeah, because there's no shame in failure and that kind of thing, because it's not a public ridicule or anything like that. There's only a very small handful of people who ever see the results of any of the tests, and all of those people are there to help you.
Exactly that. And people have come back, and said, right, well, how do I fix this? And they're engaging, and that we feel that as a consequence, they're now running a better business, providing customers with a better service, and being safer to themselves, because there is a lot about PPE and that sort of thing. And it really is a value add overall.
It's not about trying to make people do everything the one true way.
No,
but you wouldn't question it. This is, as we said earlier, it's not a direct comparison. I'm not suggesting it is, but you wouldn't question a gas fitter, wouldn't question doing corgi, or an electrician.
It's just part of what you do.
It's just part of what you do. And it means that customers then have a degree of assurance that you have been assessed, that you do know what you're doing.
Potentially it can even form a barrier to entry. An industry which is very cheap and easy to get into. As a consequence, we have a lot of issues. If it's seen as a kind of thing that everybody should do, then it starts becoming a barrier to entry, and then you do end up with that kind of higher quality the other side of that barrier, which will do us all favours.
Yes.
And when it comes to asking for £35 or £50 an hour off somebody, it's much easier to do that. Say, look, I'm kind of effectively qualified, as opposed to just somebody who's just kind of come off the street, so to speak. It's an interesting thing, and we are pursuing it, and it's really just a matter now of trying to get as many people to do the remote theory, which we developed during COVID, but we're keeping on, and then we can book practical days where we'll get 3, 6, 9 people through in like half-day sessions on the practical side, still maintaining an element of social distancing and all that sort of thing. So I'm just really hoping that we can get that back revved up in the next couple of months. Now things are open. But that's cool. So now I am going to turn to quick fire 12 questions. Now, the idea with this, it's new, you are guinea pig for it, is that not each question should lead on to a big debate or anything like that. We're looking for simple, single phrase answers quickly. So what comes first into your head? So the first one, I've made it quite easy. What's your current car?
A Mercedes CLK 500.
And what's the first car you professionally detailed?
A Series 1 Lotus Elise.
Gorgeous. What is your money no object dream car?
Some sort of resto mod Gullwing SL Mercedes.
Oh, 300 SL. I'd dig that. I haven't even thought about resting modding one of those because they're worth so much money as they are.
Sultan of Brunei did one with running SL55 running gear. I saw it at an auction. It was fabulous.
Awesome. Although I do like the 3-litre engine in that. It's quite a clever engine in the original Sterling Moscow. Anyway, I'm the one making it slow. DA or rotary?
DA.
How many bouquets or buckets?
However many you need to do the job properly.
Okay, well that's not. Would you consider 2 or 3 or?
You do not need more than 2 buckets.
Okay, there we go. Ceramic or wax?
Ceramic.
Interesting. Ferrari or Porsche?
Neither.
Correct answer. Subaru or Mitsubishi? And you can't repeat answers.
Mitsubishi.
Bastard. Flex or Rupes?
Rupes.
What would be your dream car to detail?
I've never put my hands on a Jaguar XJ220, and that is a poster car.
I have, but I got kicked out of Bewley. And it wasn't my hands.
I sat in one at VMAX, but I never got to detail one. So that's on something I'd like to do.
There's a lot of paint on those as well.
There's a lot of them. They're a big car.
Big cars. And your final question here, actually. We're going for 11 questions because we're special. Sunday drive or Sunday detail?
Drive.
And perfect car, perfect road. Which ones?
Oh, I don't know. That's a big question, Bert.
Yeah.
That's a really big question. Yeah. Something like a Porsche GT3 and a 911 GT3 on a road down sort of.
I'm guessing Spain or Italy.
I was going to say a bit of Swiss Alps, something like that. Although saying that, Los Angeles National Forest,
Yes.
we did that in a convertible Corvette. That was pretty hard to beat.
Did you manage to make it through in America in a convertible without hitting an eagle? Because then you've got a better record than one other person at this table.
Goodness me, I'm surprised you're not in prison.
I nearly murdered a bald eagle with a Mustang, and it flew into us. We were doing about 40 miles an hour, and it was in Virginia, and it went through the plastic radiator grill, and it has a pusher fan. So basically, the fan was in front of the radiator on this one, and it was trying to pull itself in towards the spinning pan. Bear in mind, it was about minus.
Just kill me now.
It was about minus 10 degrees, something like that. It was really cold. Everything was kind of permafrosted, and a park warden came over, and he was a picture of a man, big bloke, and of course big pickup truck, and he was on the phone, and he said, "Hang on, I've got to leave it. I'm not going to do an accent because they're terrible." He was talking to a friend or something like that. We've got some tourists have been murdering our national bird like this. Got in the back of his pickup, just picked up gauntlets because obviously everybody has gauntlets for it, and these were proper leather kinky ones, not sort of welding gloves. Pulled the bird out and most of the radiator with it, and threw it up, and it took off and it flew away. It was fine, and just left me with a rental car with a very smashed up front end. This was 2015 when the Mustang had just come out. We had the very, very first one that I think Budget had. And then we went down to Miami and found the dodgiest body shop in Miami to fix the bumper, put on new parts and everything. And it cost $70 for them to take the bumper off, put a new grill in, put the bumper on, do a smart repair. And the part I got from Ford for about 120. But the labour rate down there was amazingly cheap.
Wow.
So yeah, I wasn't expecting to go through that story, but anyway.
Thanks
could be
for
worse.
sharing.
Yes.
And if anyone from Budget was listening.
Yeah. Well, we fixed it all, and the only extras we had to pay was $900 in speeding fines.
That was Len's, wasn't it?
Well, we're not sure. He got stopped by the police, and
Didn't
he
you
got
put
a
it on his
ticket.
credit card?
No, he didn't. I got the ticket because the policeman.
But no, I thought you said his credit card was lodged with Budget.
Yeah, his credit card was Budget, and I just walked off because he owed me money for various other things. But, yeah, no, there's that story. It's not.
It's not as if
suitable for
Len
this podcast.
listens to this podcast.
No, not at all. But if I talk to Christ, I won't mention Daytona 500 and the crossdresser. It's a very awkward story involving 6 police cars. So I am going to say goodbye. Paul, thank you very much for coming all the way over here to Westshire, as Don Colbeck used to call it.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for asking.
Been a pleasure, and hopefully we'll get you back at some point soon.
Look forward to it.
And Ian and I will be talking to more clever and interesting people to make us look sort of clever and interesting.
Well, I don't think they'll make us look clever and interesting, but they'll bring an aura to the whole place, I think.
Yeah. No, they'll improve matters. So
Between that and the dogs.
yeah. So it's goodbye from me.
Goodbye from me.
And goodbye from me.
And thank you very much for listening. Hello everybody, I just wanted to remind you that we have updated the Pro Detailer Mega Pack. It now includes issues 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 and 13, along with the Wax Talk show guides back from 2018 and 2019, bit of memorabilia, and you also get a couple of air fresheners. It's $44.99 including UK postage, and we can also ship it abroad. Grab it now for the full back catalogue and save £14.